So a quick little video about priming some boards for our trip to Maldon in November. So on the materials list, I talk about using box board, or sometimes it's called straw board too. It was a product that used to have a very brown colour, like what I'm showing you here, probably a little bit greyer actually than this. And on the other side, it had a quite a distinct texture to it. That's now becoming kind of difficult to get. They've stopped making it. So what is available now is this called high density box board. This is, as you can see, it's slightly warmer in colour than the other stuff, if you're familiar with the other stuff. It doesn't have quite the same solid coating on it. The other one had a bit of a feel like a slightly slippery coating on the shiny side, on the smooth side. And this is, it comes in different weights, and this is the 3000 micron. So it's probably about 4 mil thick. It is slightly softer than the box board, if you've used the other type before. And it is, though, actually much easier to cut. So what I've done here, I've already done that. I have cut it into 8 by 10 inch boards, and have started priming some of these out of a big sheet that I got, which from memory was about 43 by 31 inch. I can't think what that will be in centimetres, but I did get 15 8 by 10 boards out of one sheet. So that's pretty good. There was a little bit of wastage, but not too much. Probably, about an inch down one side and a little bit off down the other side. So, so that is, fairly efficient, getting 10 boards out of one sheet. And as I said, it is much easier to cut than the other box board that we used to be able to get. I am just putting on a coat of, on these ones, I've primed it with a neutral grey. So here is the Michael Harding neutral grey that I'm using. It's a really nice acrylic primer. Has a slight little bit of tooth to it, which works well. And these boards, these new boards that we're using here, are priming up really, really nicely with the Michael Harding primer. So the Michael Harding primer comes in grey, white, which I'm going to prime some in white as well as grey, but it does come in other colours. Some of you have seen me working with boards primed in raw sienna, like this one here. Comes out in that lovely yellow colour, which can be really nice to paint on. And this year I've also bought this one here, the burnt sienna, as a possibility of working on that coloured ground like that. Now, of course, you could be getting just a white gesso primer and tinting it with acrylic colour to get some of these other colours. But for, the amount that I work on, buying it in these pre-mixed colours is convenient for me. Basically, what I do find, sometimes I have primed a big board and then cut it up smaller, but I do find I tend to sometimes then mark the boards as I'm cutting them up. So I do now prefer to cut up the boards to the sizes that I'm using, and then prime them. Basically, I'm finding with this board that one coat really is enough because it is quite absorbent. So you've got to apply it relatively thickly. And basically, I'm working on doing what we call a crow's foot texture. So rather than all the brush strokes going in one direction, is work across the board going in all different directions. And that throws then the light around a lot more on the board, and it actually helps you get a slightly more evenness once it's dry. And so it will then dry to a nice kind of flat, not sort of throwing the light because of any texture that's there left in the board from the brush strokes. You can also use this, and that's I'm suggesting if anyone's thinking of maybe working with watercolour or water-based media up in Maldon, like watercolour or gouache or watercolour pencils, I don't know, whatever. You could also be considering using the boards like this as well, but you can get, Daniel Smith does one, a primer, and I do have a tub of it here in the studio, but for the life of me can't find it at the moment. You can get liquid primers that are just like these kind of gessos, and be working on gessoing some of the boards to work on with watercolour. And they work out quite well. So, I mean, these look really rough. And they can be as rough as this. I don't think it's going to really matter too much. But this has got the Daniel Smith primer on it. You tend to need, these have only got one coat on them. I think with the watercolour primer, it is best to put 2 coats on just to get a little bit more of a thicker coating, because it is a fairly thin primer. And just the benefit, I mean, rather than trying to tape down pieces of paper, if you're working on a solid board like this, it is going to be a lot more convenient than working with bits of paper taped down onto boards and things flying everywhere, etc., etc. So Daniel Smith does a watercolour ground. There are a couple of other brands that do grounds as well. Golden being one of them, that I know from what I've been told is a really good primer as well. So yeah, as I said, I've made 15 8x10s out of that large sheet, which will be more than enough for you up there in Maldon. You probably will hope to use most of them. I didn't work it out exactly, but I probably could have got maybe half a dozen, maybe 8x10s, and then some 10x12s out of the sheet as well, had I wanted to, but to get some 8x10s, but I already had a fair few 10x12s, I should say, in stock. And you really, generally speaking, don't need anything much bigger than these 2 sizes. Really, if you just came up with a whole bunch of 8x10s, you're going to be fine for the few days of the workshop. Just remember also that on the materials list, there is a day that we will be working on a larger format. For that day on the larger format, I probably would suggest just purchasing a larger board, like one of the Neef branded ones. I'll just get one down. Oh, that's a linen one, but they have labels like that. I'd get the dark green or the green labelled ones, the polycotton canvas rather than the linen. But if you want to get linen, by all means do that, and have that in one of the bigger sizes. Hope this helps. Speak to you soon.